Ladies and gentlemen, our next discussion focuses on airspace control, managing the challenges, a critical dimension of modern operational preparedness. And we are honored to be joined by Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, a former Commander-in-Chief of Western Air Command and one of India's foremost aviators and strategists. With over 5,000 fighter sorties, command of elite squadrons and leadership at the Tactics Air Combat Development Establishment, Air Marshal Choudhury has directed operational planning across command, Air Force and joint levels.
And to set the stage for this conversation, let's first view a short audio visual on Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury, please.
Over 5,000 sorties on fighters, commanding fighter squadrons, operational wings commanding India's airspace. This is the career of Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury. An aviator and strategist, he has led India's elite tactics air combat development establishment and directed operational planning across command, Air Force and joint levels. As Senior Air Staff Officer of Western Air Command, Air Defence Commander of 2 operational commands and AOC of the Composite Operational Battle Response and Analysis Group, he has shaped India's air strategy at the highest levels. Internationally engaged, he has led exercises with the United States, France and the UAE, strengthening cooperation and testing India's air power in complex environments. A former commandant of the National Defence College, New Delhi, decorated with the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Vayu Sena Medal and Vishisht Seva Medal, Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury embodies India's air power, vigilant, precise and prepared.
And please join us in welcoming Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury to the stage for this fireside chat on airspace control, managing the challenges, moderated by Republic Media Network's business editor, Pranav Kulkarni. Over to you, Pranav.
Marshal Choudhury, thank you very much for joining us. You've flown all the way from Pune to be with us. We really appreciate that. To begin with, our topic for today is space control. And when we really talk about space control, I want to understand from you, is it just purely about, declaring a no-fly zone just in no time here and there? What is it really? Is it just about civil or is it military? What exactly is it? Could you help us understand?
Thank you for having me over. Thank you for having me over. Thank you to DG Claus and Public TV for this opportunity. And I'm glad because I keep saying air power gets very little airtime. And when it does get it, it's usually to packed houses, So, beg your pardon, sir? You're on line in here. No, that's on the light, absolutely in the lighter vein. No, yes, control of air. Now, control of air means different things to different people. There's a control of air and there's airspace control. And control of air is a larger construct. Airspace control is a subset of control of air. Control of air means being able to dominate, or it's about the degree of ownership of not just your own sovereign airspace. That is your own. Control of air in operational terms means decisive control of adversarial airspaces. And that is what will define and has defined warfare for the longest time, ever since air power came into the being. And this has more been so over the last several decades. In India, I think we've it's receded to our mind because I think it was brought out in the morning session that 71 was 50 years ago. As the last time we had full-fledged employment of air power, last and the only time. Air power was constrained before that in every conflict, after that in every conflict, that is 99 as well, except possibly for this time. So my larger picture point of view, 71, 50 years ago, we've forgotten the use of air power and what is actually the main role is. So if you do not control the vertical dimension over any surface domain, they're seeking, dominance over that domain will not be possible, especially in today's case. Because if the adversary has control of the air over you, it will come in the way of all your surface operations. And this has come out in the history of every recent war. So this is one aspect of controlling of air. Air superiority was a term that brought out. And the other terminologies like this, favorable air situation, air dominance are loosely used. But all it effectively means is to be able to dominate an adversary's airspace, whether with total lack of air opposition, that is air supremacy, air superiority, a little lesser degree. Favorable air situation means control of air or adversarial spaces in limited time and space for limited periods. Okay, so it's a degree. Whereas airspace control is to having the total situational awareness of what is there in that airspace volume in your sovereign airspace and during war over contested airspaces.
So conventionally, our approach has been holding ground or looking at adversaries. Also, we normally look at adversaries who are, immediate neighbors in terms of land neighbors. If we really have to look at it from an Air Force perspective, who are your threats? Who are your real threats in terms of aerial neighborhood?
This is something I keep talking about whenever I get an opportunity. When I say that the danger is today, first is in the lighter vein. I think post-op Sindoor, we have more air power specialists than officers who were there in the Indian Air Force. So that's a challenge. But besides that, what has happened is, I think when we look at recent conflicts, we tend to draw wrong lessons. Unlike other countries all over the world, and indeed air warfare or aerial use of air power in the last 2-3 decades, there's one drastic change and difference which we need to bear in mind is the contexts are very different from India. All the lessons which you see over the past 20 years of use of air power has been against conditions with little or no air opposition. Please look at Ukraine. Ukrainian Air Force lasted for a very short period of time. Today it is having to prosecute the warfare the way it is, not because of its choice, because drones are its only answer now. It didn't have an air power adequate enough to defend itself, let alone have an air power with an offensive capability. So in the absence of its offensive capability, it has adapted to warfare differently. Russian Air Force has never been conceived in it structurally and organizationally and doctrinally to dominate adversarial airspaces. They don't need air superiority in their air warfare doctrine, because for them, air power is a clear subset of the surface campaign. Israel is an entirely different kettle of fish because its adversaries do not have air forces. But in our case, we have two strong air forces against us, who are air forces which one is a near peer air force, one is a larger air force. And both are very well integrated into the military strategy and the national security of the nations. So there is a huge difference in Indian context.
But when you say in terms of Indian context, on one side you're saying that the last time we actually were in a full-blown war, the others were either conflicts or strikes, was in 1971. And in between that period, we have, army, which has, forever advocated that holding ground is extremely important. We have the Navy, which says that we are catering to your economic interests. What is the Air Force's argument in terms of, probably, what is the role of the Air Force beyond just guarding the skies when there is a conflict or a skirmish, such as the one that took place recently?
The irony is, the business of guarding the sky is not during the conflict, it's during peacetime as well, which most people don't give too much of credence with. The Indian Air Force looks after the air defense 365, into 24 into 7 into 365 actually, if you really look at it. And every time there's a border violation, there's an infringement, it makes the news. Whenever there's an aerial interception or a scramble, it never makes even the headlines. Or forget about it, doesn't even make it to the regional papers. So the point I'm trying to make is air power is an important aspect. Its salience in the Indian context has not been adequately either studied, examined, understood, let alone leveraged. Most of the arguments which I've heard today, a lot of it, I'm sorry, comes from the simple fact of not spending enough time thinking what does air power do to your national security. We come down to the service-specific requirements because the Army and the Navy most certainly, I grant them that, will look at air power from the service-centric point of view, but tend to forget, which is, I'm surprised that this question is being asked, what is the role of air power other than serving the skies? It just shows our PR in the Indian Air Force has been lousy, despite it being articulated in our doctrine. The Indian Air Force has two key roles, and they are not necessarily in sequence of one above the other. One is defense of sovereign airspace. That means right from the border, going up to, as of the International Convention, 60,000 feet, and technically higher, if you come to agreement on higher altitude limitations and boundaries, that's sovereign airspace. And that is during peacetime. So it just doesn't mean about the kinetic aspects, it means 24/7 weaving all your radars in the entire Indian Air Force and the civilian radar, and now of late the Army radars as well, into a larger situational awareness of insecurity of a nation. That's the peacetime role. Operational role are two. One is a strategic offensive air power, which we haven't given adequate thought on the effects and outcomes. 1971, I'll take you back, Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal, phenomenal, prescient, foresighted strategy of employment of air power. Incidentally, there is very little known on the use of Indian Air Force and air power on the Western Front because the Eastern Front has sucked in all the oxygen. But I would argue that if we study the war fighting, both the Army and the Air Force, on the Western Front, you will have way more critical lessons relevant to the Indian context. Because that is a lesson we didn't invest enough study and research in, and we forgot about it. Air power made a decisive role there. He's brought in this strategy of targeting enemy target systems. So one was an air system because obviously it's air power. Second was energy systems, fuel tanks, refineries. Third was communication system, roads, railway lines, shipping yards, everything possible. And obviously, fifth was the more critical aspect, was the military aspect of it, the conventional enemy warfighting machine, which was there all through. 3% of IF's effort was spent on strategic targeting. Kiamari tanks in Karachi, though there was a little discussion on who did it first, let's put it simply in the greater things of jointness, we both did it together. In slight difference in sequences, that's all. But the fact is, Kiamari oil tanks, the Karachi tanks, the refinery and the Sui gas plant. Within the war, it set the fuel production and availability of Pakistan back. During the war, it had to import fuel by road from Iran. Now that's strategic outcome, but we spent only 3% of our effort on it because we didn't have the capability. Indian Air Force has come a long way in terms of strategic capabilities and creating strategic outcomes with this kind of targeting. So this is the primary role. Other is air defense. Now air defense today, one quick point here, that unlike the past today, air defense is a misnomer in the term. When you use the word defense, actually it's offensive. Because A, you have a situational awareness and oversight into the adversary's airspace. That means you're seeing him when getting airborne. And now you have the ability to shoot him down in his own airspace. So air defense from the earlier 70s construct where you waited for him because you didn't have the capability to come into your territory to shoot him down, now you're doing it in his own territory. And very interestingly, the IF's latest doctrine, in his chapter on no war, no peace operations, in against external threat, underpins saying that operations will be on these two strengths. One is offensive air power capability and offensive air defense, and it is held true.
So we saw in terms of attacking the systems, we actually saw a number of precision strikes that crumpled various establishments within Pakistan. What, in your view, actually brought Pakistan to, ask for ceasefire in Operation Sindoor?
Okay, I'll start this answering the question in a little different manner, because of late I realized, in fact, all of us have seen that, the Ukraine war brought in the first change of outlook towards air defense. Forcing us to relook at air defense entirely differently. That it reached that situation was a flaw in the Russian strategy, because it didn't take out its air defense with the kind of goal and precision and the overwhelming manner it is needed. Okay. So they came in a strategy of air denial. Now, air denial, I want to put it on record, is a strategy of a weak nation which does not have an adequate or a capable air power. I'm sorry, Indian Air Force has just been declared the third in the world MMDR rankings. That's a different issue. But the point is, why has this change come with reducing numbers? It's just because of demonstrated capability, what it can achieve. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is that Indian air defense, people started suggesting that probably air denial is the idea to go forward. Okay. Look at Israel, Iron Dome, the innermost layer of its three-tier concept of air defense protection. Iron Dome is the innermost layer. Small country, but it couldn't prevent 100% missile and drone threats. And that is the reality. Look at India's scale and size. There is no way you will get enough air defense to seal off the entire country. Missiles, drones, and aircraft, I am sorry, will come through. Yes. How effectively are you in engaging them, in what number of manners? That's where your importance comes in, and how well you plan your air defense. But what brought Pakistan to the table, which General Ghai was mentioning about, them coming to the ceasefire table, was our offensive capability. Air power hurting them in a manner where they realize if they continue to be hit like this for a little more time, will bring in irreparable damage, because air power resurrection comes at a huge cost, especially because it's high tech. So my point of argument, which I'm trying to make it in front of you, is please understand that a nation's ability to force its will or bring in decisive outcomes is with its offensive capability. Air defense prevented us from getting clobbered by him, kept us safe. So there's a huge difference here. But the important point is you can't do one without the other. Both are integral parts of air defense, and offensive air power are integral parts of air power, which I call, they're like the synergistic twins, the Siamese twins. You can't do this, joint at the hip.
Okay. Could you, this particular Operation Sindoor especially saw, a non-conventional warfare, in the sense a lot of drones exchanging and being shot down, the visuals. How would you, what then is the role, or what then is the vision for conventional warfare in terms of conventional platforms and, piloted aircraft? What is the role for that, part of the Air Force, or that, element of the Air Force as we look forward, as we go ahead?
Mr. Musk again. He said that all the guys who are pursuing the F-35 programs are absolute idiots. I don't know what to say, whether I agree or disagree, but I most certainly disagree on him on one aspect. Drones and missiles, I'm not surprised. If people here are surprised that they were a part of Sindoor, then I'm sorry, you've been reading things wrong. Drones and missiles have been a part of warfare for ages. It has lent an ability to carry out coercion or punitive effects without committing your forces into a full-fledged fight. Someone mentioned this morning that, short wars were a past reality of the... Yes, but we built that myth. For 10 years, a decade plus, we said all our wars are going to be short and swift till Ukraine happened. The point I'm trying to make is, ladies and gentlemen, wars and conflicts have their own dynamics. the biggest challenge will be, and the biggest danger lies in taking away lessons from Sindoor, thinking it was a war. I think that was made absolutely clear. It was just an operation. What air power did is not what air power can do in its entirety. It was just a showcase. But it is also a showcase of capability. The larger point is that every context of warfare will bring in a fact that how will this war or this conflict be fought. Our problem is in the absence of really deeper study and analysis, a lot of anecdotal reporting, points of view, we have drawn the wrong lessons from the right wars. Our context is different. Indian context is vastly different, whether it is in the, let's face it, continental threat is our fundamental threat. Navy in Indian Ocean is a strategic requirement. It's not a security requirement as yet, for heaven's sake. Continental threat is just security environment, borders, unresolved borders, a hostile neighborhood that was brought out in the last panel. So where does air power fit into this? It fits in to bringing your war-fighting capability towards a larger military strategic goal and a national goal rather than service-specific requirements. Brilliant thing about Sindoor was it's not about air power doing this or air power doing that. Yes, most certainly, I keep saying, it was a resurgence and a revival of air power, a realization in the Indian strategic and security community that air power exists and still has a huge role to play. But the more important message, I think, what happened in Sindoor was analysis of a situation, which I think General Ghai brought out brilliantly, saying that the services sat together, worked it out, okay, what will work best in this situation, and let that service play the role. Tomorrow, it will be another role where another service will play the lead role, or may have 2 or 3 services playing the role together. You cannot make the mistake of preparing only for one kind of fight. So I think what has come out in Sindoor is that we need more agile strategies, agile ways of war fighting, rather than insisting on certain structures. Yes, theaterization most certainly for a larger goal of being able to prosecute warfare and bring together all the services for the best military solutions to a larger national objective and not a service-specific victory or a goal. I think that is what the larger role comes in here.
And do you see the whole tri-services integration that has been taking place, do you see that taking place or taking shape finally?
You know, it's ironic because in this discussion, debate today, we heard everybody and all kinds of thoughts brought out. You know, the US system, the Chinese, the Russian systems, the way the US military struggled with it. Incidentally, what we are facing here between the Army, Air Force and the Navy, it's a pure professional competitiveness which is there in every military in the world. Nichols Goldwater today is again under rethink because it has not brought in, incidentally it was brought in for greater civilian oversight over the military and not so much about military jointness. That happened to be a convenient second point. But the point I'm trying to make is the militaries take a long time to evolve. We are in the process of evolution. Just because we are in a day and age where technology and things happen overnight, if you think you're going to get a solution to this overnight, I think going wrong. And I'll leave with one thought. Very interestingly, look at China. Despite being looked at as a static legacy organization, look at the transformation of the Chinese and the PLAF, the Chinese Air Force. What is interesting is China's adapting its theater structures constantly. They are not tied down. We are seeking the ultimate solution. I think that's where the Indian military is going wrong. Everyone wants the ultimate solution in their control. I'm sorry, that's not about war fighting for the future. So I think we'll get there. We will struggle and we'll find a way, but I think logically we will find the way forward, which is the Indian way forward, which I am sure, and which was brought out earlier, I think by the previous Air Chief Marshal Rakesh Paduria. We said, yeah, there are hardcore professionals at work here. They will find a solution. Trust them.
Hey, Marshal Choudhury, thank you very much for your very, very frank opinions on this. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Air Marshal Choudhury, for sharing your insights into one of the most pressing operational imperatives of our times. I'd like to call on stage our Senior Executive Editor, Abhishek Kapoor, to please felicitate Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury.